Veshavti, Besholom, Part 6, Ois Tes. Just two. Until now in the Maimer, we're talking about Yaakov Avinu's neder. He promised that he makes to Hashem. Once he has to leave Beersheva, he's heading for Haran, and he promises Hashem, if Hashem brings him home in peace, all the things that will happen, and most specifically, that this stone that I put up as a matzeva, that I stood it up, it's going to be a Beis Elikim, a house for Hashem. And all the questions that we asked in the Maimer, and most particularly, how could a stone be a house for Hashem, and especially that it's a higher level, not just Elikim, but an even higher level. In order to explain this, we explain at length that this isn't just a story, but it's something that has to do with every Jew. And we explained the idea of Yaakov leaving Beersheva and going to Haran, the different levels of spirituality that Yaakov is leaving and going down into the physical world, whether from an intellectual level into a practical level, or even from the practical spiritual level into being involved in the world itself. We explained that when Yaakov leaves, his leaving comes from a realization that the Yud of Yaakov, which is the Yud of Hashem's name, that's what makes everything happen, and that's what enables Yaakov to go even to the lowest place, and nevertheless, even there, not only does he remain complete, but he uses this place, and this is where he sets up Klal Yisrael in a way that's even greater than what Avram and Yitzchak managed to do. And then we explain that Yaakov did all this only after leaving to Haran and receiving special power from above, Tzave Yeshuas Yaakov, in order to give him power to fulfill his shlichus. Hashem gives Yaakov Avinu the 375 channels of light from Arich, which bring all of his power to their greatest ability. So it's not just that as a result of fulfilling his mission, he reaches a higher level, but in order to fulfill his mission, Hashem gives him the level that he needs. And then we explained that Yaakov Avinu takes the stone, which that's the main avodah, taking something which is the furthest away from godliness, as it's in Makom, which is a place which shows on time and space. It's a stone which is an inanimate object, and even there it's plural, it's stones, and he transforms them all into one, brings them into the understanding of the oneness of Hashem. And this concept is by every single Jew, because every single Jew's neshama comes down from the highest place, Beersheva, and it goes into Haran, into the lowest place, in order to fulfill a mission. And in order to do this mission, he gets Sheva. He's satiated with an unbelievable amount of power in order to enable him and to give him the strength and the ability to do the mission. And then we explained that the mission of every Jew in this world, there's two aspects to it. There's Torah and mitzvahs, which are the more spiritual aspect. That's something which the neshama does in order for the neshama to reach a higher level than it was able to reach before it came down into this world. But the main purpose is not the neshama. The main purpose is the fact that what we can do in this physical world. And in the physical world means being involved not only with mitzvahs, but even being involved with B'chol D'rochecha Deyu when we do something. And in the physical world itself, there's the knowledge of Hashem. That knowledge is something that's above wisdom. That's the highest possible level. And now we continue in Ois Tes, that this is why once Yaakov leaves Beersheva and he goes to Haran, which this, as we're saying now, refers to the neshama going down into the body. What does he do? He takes from the stones of the place. That's the main avodah. The main avodah is stones. Because the main purpose of the neshama coming down into this world is not for the neshama itself. If it was for the neshama itself, then yes, up there we can't do Torah and mitzvahs because Hashem put the Torah and mitzvahs into the physical world. Down here we could do Torah and mitzvahs. And in fact, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, through learning Torah and doing the mitzvahs, the neshama reaches a level which is higher than it was able to reach on its own. Because on its own, the neshama, it's true, part of Hashem, but by learning Torah, which is Hashem's wisdom, and the mitzvahs, which are Hashem's will, these are true garments of the soul, but yet they bring the soul to a place that the soul on its own couldn't reach there. That's what the soul achieves for itself through coming into this world. But the main purpose and the main mission isn't for the soul, what the soul does for itself. The main purpose of Vayitze Yaakov Beersheva, of the soul coming down into this world, is to fulfill the mission and the purpose of what Hashem wants in this world. What does Hashem want? Hashem wants a dira lo yizbarich b'tachtonim. He wants a dwelling place down here in a place which is tachtin, shein tachtin lamata mimenu, the lowest possible place. So when the neshama comes into this world, Torah and mitzvahs, it does something that it's not able to do up there, and it's able to reach a higher level for itself. But the main purpose is that the soul is a messenger. The soul is a shliach of Hashem to fulfill what Hashem wants in this world. And that's not what the soul can achieve in a spiritual sense, but rather what the soul can achieve by making the lowest possible place into a dwelling place for Hashem. And that's why we say that the main avodah of Vayetze Yaakov, which refers to the neshama, coming from Igra Rama, from the highest possible place, into Bira Mikta, the lowest possible place. The main thing is Vayikach Me'avnei HaMakim, taking the stones, taking the actual physical object of the world. Not just that. Makim is space, place, which is that, like we said earlier, that it's only the numerical value of Shem Havaya, and even that only after you times each letter by itself, because place itself is where godliness is hidden, it's concealed, you don't see its connection to Shem Havaya. Not only that, it's a stone which is inanimate. It doesn't feel, it doesn't grow, and it doesn't have any feelings, and it doesn't speak, it doesn't have any connection to the godly sustenance that's in the world. And you take them as they are in plural, and you take it all and you make it into one stone. You take it all and you make it into a place where Hashem's presence can dwell, to the extent that it becomes a bayis, a house for Hashem's presence. And that's the ultimate purpose. Not just for Torah and mitzvahs, which aren't with the stones. There are more spiritual avodah, but moreover for the avodah of dealing with the world itself, with the physical world itself, with the place where godliness is concealed, and bring and reveal over there the ultimate reality of godliness. And therefore the Rebbe explains that not only is this avodah more through mitzvahs, even more than through Torah, because as we explained previously, in Torah, a person's connection is more to Hashem's wisdom, to Hashem's will. He's learning about, he's understanding the will of Hashem. Whereas in mitzvahs, a person is dealing with physical things. He wears tzitzis with a physical piece of, with physical wool, a physical garment made out of wool. Tefillin is from the straps of an animal. It's all physical things. But yet, when a person does mitzvahs, it's still connected. And as we said earlier on, the Maimer, it's like the Malchus of Atzilus. It's still connected to the spiritual world. It's still connected to the will of Hashem. The ultimate and the greatest type of connection is when the person isn't only doing mitzvahs with a physical object, but even more than that, he's involved in his own mundane affairs. Kol maasecha yilu l'shem shamayim, which means they're maasecha, they're your actions. It's eating, drinking, being involved in the physical world where it's his own actions, and yet in them itself he's doing them for the sake of heaven. And even more than that, in them itself he's realizing the knowledge of Hashem. In that sense, it's even greater than mitzvahs, because mitzvahs are Hashem's mitzvahs. Here, the actions and the physical and the mundane world remains a mundane world. And yet in it itself he's revealing godliness. That's the ultimate idea of Dira B'Tachtonim. And it's a very interesting concept that the Rebbe explains here, and that the Rebbe will continue to explain in the Maimer. We know about Torah and mitzvahs. The neshama came down to this world because in the Gan Eden you can't do Torah and mitzvahs. Over here in this world we can do Torah and mitzvahs. And the Rebbe says, wait, that's what the neshama can do for itself. That's the fact that the neshama can now reach a higher level than it was able to before it came down to this world. What about what Hashem wants? What about Hashem's mission in this world? Hashem's desire was Dira B'Tachtainim. And Dira B'Tachtainim is something that's even stronger when I'm not involved in spirituality whatsoever. I'm involved in my own actions, and yet when I'm doing them, I realize that really the ultimate is Hashem. I take these stones and I make them into one stone. A very interesting example the Rebbe gave, it was Shabbos Chanukah. Sometimes there's two Shabbosos of Chanukah. Most years there's only one Shabbos of Chanukah. When there's two Shabbosos of Chanukah, the Haftarah of the second Shabbos of Chanukah is Vatishlam Kol HaMalacha, which means all the work that Shlomo HaMelech did for building the Beis HaMikdash was complete, and it discusses all the kelim, the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash, the menorah, the shulchan, etc., that Shlomo HaMelech built. And the Rebbe asks, why is that what it's all about? Why are we in Hanukkah, which is a time when we dedicate the Beis HaMikdash, but why is the Haftarah about completing the physical vessels for the Beis HaMikdash rather than about Hashem's presence resting in them or using them in order to serve Hashem? And the Rebbe explains an interesting thing. There's two aspects in Dira B'Tachtainim. Dira B'Tachtainim could be when I use the physical world in order to serve Hashem, but in that sense I'm taking them out of their status of low physical, and I'm bringing them up into a status, I'm changing them into spirituality, I'm using them for spiritual. Then there's another idea. When the physical remains physical, it's the menorah, which is gold, it's the shulchan, which is wood covered by gold, etc., etc. And in this itself, I'm recognizing godliness. The Rebbe gave an example. I can go on the street, and I can meet a Jew, and I can talk to him about putting on tefillin. When I get him to put on tefillin, I took him out of his status where he's just a person who doesn't put on tefillin. I'm making him do a mitzvah, connect to Hashem. I can meet a guy and I can talk to him about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. I'm taking him out of the status of not doing what he's supposed. I'm making him do what Hashem wants him to do. Then there's an even deeper thing. I can walk in the street, meet a Jew and say to him, Good Shabbos. I can walk in the street, meet a guy and say to him, Good morning. I didn't change him. He still remains whatever he was before, and yet in his place I've brought down the godly connection into the place where he is. In that sense, that's the deepest and highest form of Dira B'Tachtainim. And then the Rebbe continues in Ois Yud to explain that that's why the greatness of the Avnei HaMakom, once they become one stone, you take them from plural and you make them into one stone by refining them and by showing the godliness that's in them. And now what happens to this stone? This stone itself goes above the head of Yaakov, or like we said earlier, either that it's higher than Yaakov's head, because it's surrounding his head, or that it's something that lifts up the head of Yaakov Avinu. That's what this stone is able to do. And as a result of that, it becomes Beis Elikim. And the Rebbe continues that means not just Elikim, God, in the idea of Hashem's name Elikim, but even higher than that, Hashem's name Havaya, and even higher than that, the very essence of Hashem. What does this all mean? And what's the greatness that happens through it? We know that the head of Yaakov is the Yud of Shem Havaya, as we said. The head of Yaakov is a very high place. The head of Yaakov shows on the concept of that Yud that sustains the world. However, as we learned earlier, when we were talking about the 375 lights of Arich that Yaakov receives, they're above the head of Yaakov, because the head of Yaakov, the Yud of Shem Havaya, is still part of Ishtalshlus, Chachma, Bina, Das. It's all part of the godly energy that shines into the world. But it's not the concept of the essence of godliness. And this is also something that we learned. There's Elohim, that's the godly light that's inside the world. Havaya is the godly light that's above the world. The essence of godliness is something much deeper. And in order to explain this, the Rebbe explains that there's various reasons that are brought down in Kabbalah and in other places. Why did Hashem create the world? The simple reasons that it says is in order either begin the Ishtamaydun so that the creatures of the world should know Hashem, or Yizgalu Shleimus Kechaisav Pulaisav, Hashem's powers and actions should be completely revealed. The reasons that's explained in Chassidus is based on the Medrash, which is that there should be for Hashem Adira B'Tachteinim, a dwelling place down here. And that's the ultimate and the real ultimate reason of the creation of the world. Because all the other reasons are something which is achieved through the creation of the world. But then there's what did Hashem want in the creation, that's Adira B'Tachteinim, and that ultimately is revealed specifically through taking the stones, through revealing godliness in the physical world itself. And Hashem, in the next lesson, we'll continue to explain this concept.